Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and welcome to the Post 59. What created my long PhD candidature, and how do I fix it? This request comes via the legendary Super Sam. Super Sam's a friend of mine, and Super Sam is going through some challenges at the moment. She's also had 7 different supervisors through her candidature. She's been enrolled for 6 years. She's gone through multiple at-risk proceedings, and it's all got a bit complicated now. She now has to write a letter to the dean, write a letter to the dean to explain how she is going to finish. What is she going to do? So she asked that I help configure what that letter might look like, and that's what we're going to do today. And she'd asked that we share this conversation for everybody that's just starting, so that you understand the consequences of a long candidature. And for the people in the middle of this hell, let's walk with Super Sam, let's walk with you, and let's make this better. So this post has 2 parts. The first part is we're doing the diagnostic. What are the most common causes of a long candidature? What makes this situation particularly problematic? And then the second half, we're actually going to walk together and we're going to create the solution to solve it, to get you finished, to get you to examination. Now, of the hundreds of students that I have supervised for their research masters and their PhD, a sizable chunk of them now are what are called rescue supervisions. That is, these students have moved through multiple supervisors, the supervisors have walked away, some serious stuff's happened, and somebody's got to try and help them and get them through. And as you might remember, in the last 5 years of his life, Steve and I supervised these students. We specialised in these students, and they were sociologically interesting. They were women, Indigenous students, students with a disability, and older students. Interesting, eh? There is research in this field. There is very clear research now in higher degrees about the sociology of the students that finish and the sociology of the students that have long candidatures and indeed a trit. Now, what this research demonstrates is attrition or long candidatures has nothing to do at all with the ability of the student, but the inability of our universities to create what I describe as porous teaching and learning and supervisory protocols. But why the length of candidature matters so much, and why I'm so focused on it through my entire career, is the longer you are enrolled, the less likely you are to finish. So let's talk about this. The reason this happens is because I would argue we have in our universities what's called a deficit model of PhD supervision. So this model of teaching and learning and supervision starts with the ideology that a man or a woman or a non-binary identifying human is incomplete. They're in deficit, and they need a great teacher. They need a great supervisor to bring them to excellence, to bring them to completion. So interestingly enough, or not, the deficit model of teaching and learning particularly impacts on the students who most suffer discrimination in the rest of their lives. Those students that are supposedly different from the normative pathway into a doctoral program. The deficit model in higher education particularly started to be studied in first-year undergraduate students, because first-year undergraduate students had such a high attrition rate and they were so dissatisfied, they were so unhappy most of the time, and they dropped out at very, very high rates. But instead of assuming that the student needed to change, which was the deficit model, universities with this research started to realise, well, if we want to reduce attrition in first-year undergraduate students, the university itself has to change. Teaching and learning and andragogy has to change. But of course, what's happening in doctoral programs? Our attrition rates are our little dirty secret, aren't they? Because what happens is supervision is individualised. We don't really know what's happening in the labs. what's happening in the offices. It's behind closed doors and it's individualised, and we try to regulate those supervisory relationships through supervisory professional development and through supervisory charters and so forth. But there clearly is a lot going wrong, and there are many proxies for a lot going wrong. One of those proxies is the mental health of higher degree students, first studied with starkness in that Belgian article in 2017. But the mental health issues of our higher degree students shows that a lot is going wrong in supervision. And those who haven't had the life experience that is so tethered to what is a normal academic and a normal academic life, they're marked as different, as in deficit, and require all sorts of pathway programs to render them complete. So we need a much better way beyond what Biggs describes as, quote, blame the student, end of quote. Sometimes, perhaps most of the time, the reasons for failure, the reasons for attrition aren't about the student's lack of motivation or lack of ability. The ignorance, the marginalisation of student knowledge in particular is most actioned on the group that suffers in the rest of their lives, suffers injustice. So women, students with disabilities and impairments, Indigenous students, students of colour and so forth, and of course older students. Think about how much of our doctoral education is highly normative. When we think of a PhD student, we think of a young man or a young woman in a lab, and they are absolutely the minority of our PhD students. And these assumptions about normal students not only hurt our universities and hurt knowledge, but wow, they hurt individual students. So let's invert this a little bit. Which groups are finishing their doctorate? Well, the science-based disciplines have a higher completion rate and a faster completion rate than the humanities, the social sciences and the arts, and men in a structured lab-based environment have the fastest completion of all. Now, the University of Melbourne studied this and the reasons for student attrition. And they found really a series of causes that are all, can I say, very easy to address. So a lack of a student understanding about the expectations of what's required for a degree, a poor choice of topic, poor match between student and supervisor, lack of feedback from supervisors, no clear guidelines about access to facilities or information about authorship, intellectual social isolation, and differential treatment of male and female research students. Interesting. Now you'll notice none of those characteristics studied by the University of Melbourne talk about the ability of students. That's not what causes attrition. Research shows that the completers and the non-completers are equally intellectually able. So the reason they leave, that's the key. So what's happening is institutions are failing particular groups of students in particular disciplines. But there are events that are in the control of a student, events that happen to students and slow their candidature down. So let's talk about 5 of those events, catastrophic events that happen to you and impact on your candidature. Now, firstly, 1, revolving door supervision. So students who take a long time, like Super Sam, students that take a long time often have multiple supervisors. And this problem of multiple supervisors only intensifies the longer you are enrolled. Look, even 10 years ago, which is nothing, students could pretty well guarantee that when they enrolled, their supervisor would be with them for the duration. But as the waves of restructures have confirmed, we're all the precariat now. So who you're going to start with as a supervisor, you're probably not going to end with them. But students need to finish quickly, because if you don't, then retirement or redundancy or death will occur. Now, some of the students that I work with have had 8, 9, 10. In one case, one of my students had 13, lucky 13 for some, 13 PhD supervisors before they came to me. So it's an absolute mess. And as a senior academic, think, oh, I'll get myself a professor. As a senior academic, that's not necessarily a guarantee either. In my career, I could list hundreds of very, very senior professors with funding and all these fantastic things who were made redundant, had to clear their office in a month, and all their students, 10, 15 students, had to find new supervisors. So that's the first one. Second one that causes these lags and delays, no doubt about this one, death and personal tragedy. These are the most catastrophic cases. So one of the major causes of the really, really long candidatures is a death of a spouse, a death of parents, a death of a child or children. And I've seen students lose their life, lose their candidature, lose their PhD in grief. What happens is they basically lose themselves for 3 years and then return to my office and say, where's my life gone? What's happened? Terrible. Now, I've been asked by the wonderful Tiff and Jess to do another post about how to manage grief while in academic work, and I'm very happy to do that, and I'm working on that now. But let me just say, in short, in 3 years, the shortest PhD program, even in 3 years, something really terrible happens in a person's life. So in 3 years, someone's going to die, someone's going to get sick, someone's going to lose their job, or a catastrophe. Something terrible is going to happen in your life, or to your goods, or to your house, or to your car, or something. And the longer you are enrolled, the more likely something truly catastrophic is going to occur. So let's say someone has died, and I really try and do an intervention right at this point if I can. So in the hours, the days, the weeks, and the years that follow, it's very important that these precious humans separate their life into 3 types of work: death work, grief work, and life work. And the PhD is in your life work. And what I want you to do, even in the midst of grief, I want you to touch your thesis every single day, right after the death, the day after the death. Open that file up, change a heading, check a reference, touch the thesis every day. And what you're doing is you're keeping connected with that thesis. And if you don't, then some of the saddest cases I've had to deal with in my life happen, where someone just goes away and they lose 3 years of their life. And they return after those 3 years and they realise they've lost their thesis as well. Okay. 3, the other great cause is distraction or overscheduling. You cannot pour a PhD into an already full life. If your life is full with work and kids and relationships and friends, you can't add a PhD to that. You've got an overscheduled life. So what you have to do, your bucket is full. And so what you have to do is empty some stuff from your life bucket so your PhD fits in. Too often what happens is someone's already overscheduled, they have a busy life, and then they add a PhD and there is no room for it. So really have a good diagnostic of your life and the place of a PhD in it. Now 4, family and personal relationships are not sorted out before you enroll in a PhD. Now, your whole family has to be brought on board when you're going to do a PhD. You and your partner must agree on timeframes, on behaviours, on decisions. Who is picking up the kids from school? Who's taking the kids to music? Who's taking the kids to soccer, right? Who is doing the dishes? Who is packing the dishwasher? Who is unpacking the dishwasher? This level of granularity. Now, if you haven't done this level of personal preparation, then you won't complete a thesis. There are many reasons why so many women get divorced during a PhD. And can I also say there's lots of reasons why women behave incredibly badly when their partner is enrolled in a PhD. Let me just give you one of these cases. I've had to handle some of these. These are weird, but I'll give you Steve's case. So he had to apply for funding for this student. Now in the UK, of course, unlike here in Australia, that we don't have the national system of scholarships, right? And so he applied for the student. He got nothing out of it. He was simply applying to care for this PhD student. So he got this gentleman the funding, got the scholarship, tremendous. And for the first 6 months, everything was going incredibly well, right? Then all of a sudden, this student stopped coming to meetings, and Steve was getting on the phone and contacting him. No response. And then 3 months later, his wife turned up at Steve's office and said she felt, quote, neglected while he was studying, and he was going to withdraw from the PhD program so that he could work on their relationship. So Steve, of course, had spent hundreds of hours getting the funding, caring for this student, doing it completely for the student, and all that money, all that time, that project had been wasted. So please sort out your relationship before you enter a PhD. And by the way, the PS to that story is we saw that guy in Manchester, Marks and Spencer, 20 years later. And Steve said hi, and oh, what's going on here? And the guy said, of course, the relationship, there'd been a divorce, and the worst decision he ever made was pulling out of that PhD. Ruined his life. There you go. Work on your relationship. Crucial. 5, you lose motivation, you lose passion. Now, the final reason that people have long candidatures, I would argue, is completely understandable. Everything gets a bit bloody depressing if you do it long enough. You might enjoy the thesis at the start, but you're going to hate it, absolutely hate it at the end. You need to finish the PhD so you can get on with your life. Can I say this is also true when you're writing books? You need to start a book to finish a book. You need to start an article to finish an article. If you don't finish it, you will end up hating it. And of course, you'll also lose motivation. Okay, so we've done the negative stuff, right? So that is what causes long candidatures. Fine. Now we're going to bring this home. So Super Sam, you've got the diagnostic, put that into your letter, but we're now going to, in order, provide the strategy to finish you from today. Okay, this is what you're going to do, and we'll do it in order. Number one, do a diagnostic about what has gone wrong. As you may know, I'm writing a book on, and I'm finishing it, I'm writing a book on failure at the moment. And too often I'm arguing in this book, we construct failure in a binary opposition with success. So success and failure. And actually that binary opposition lies to us. Failure is a diagnostic. So look at what has gone wrong in your candidature. Get a bit of paper and list everything that has gone wrong. But then, okay, great. But then I want you to look at that list with a lot of care. Are you blaming other people for your lack of progress? Now, if you are, very common by the way, but if you are, then go through that list again and focus instead on what you have done wrong. Now, what I need you to do is understand those failures and recognize those failures, because those failures are a diagnostic to you getting out of those failures and towards a completed thesis. Remember the old line, unless you understand your failures, you're going to repeat them. Okay, first one, diagnostic. Then 2, park that past and start fresh today. So after you've done that really difficult, emotional, intellectual diagnostic work, and you've understood how your past behaviour has created your current situation, I want you to start fresh. Quote Scarlett, tomorrow is another day. So recognise that your past behaviour got you into this situation, and you are now, from today, making different choices. And from those choices, today, you are going to behave differently. So you are making a decision today to finish this thesis. And then you are making a decision to change your behaviour so you can finish this thesis. So, great. Let's now talk about the changes in the behaviour that you're going to make to get this thesis ready for submission. 3, freshen your literature review and locate and secure your gap in knowledge. The most difficult students to help out of the really long candidature hole are the people who completed systematic reviews a long time ago. Being really honest here. There's a lot of celebration of systematic reviews. I'm not one of those people. But there's a lot of celebration of systematic reviews because they're simple, they're straightforward, and of course they're a very easy publication for your supervisors, and you get some very, very easy citations from them. That's why your supervisors want a systematic review, because they get a nice authorship credit and they get some easy citations. Wish I could be clearer than that, but that's the case. The problem with systematic reviews is that they're very limited in their applicability. And if your thesis moves into unusual directions and particularly becomes transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary or postdisciplinary, then you're in trouble. And of course, if you've taken a long time to do your thesis, then the systematic review you did 5, 6 years ago is missing the key literature of now. And of course, a PhD by its definition must confirm a significant original contribution to knowledge now, not 5 years ago, now. So for all our new students that are watching this video, think about doing a literature review rather than a systematic review. Now remember, I'm no great supporter of literature reviews either. I think they're pretty boring. But the gift of a literature review is it gives you flexibility. If something goes wrong, if the thesis becomes interdisciplinary or it goes into a different direction, then a literature review gives you wiggle room and flexibility to manage those changes. So to get a thesis home after a long candidature, what you need to do is return to your literature review and find 50 new sources, new bits of peer-reviewed literature to insert into that literature review. 50 sources, and that will freshen the literature review up for you. It will also nail down the gap in knowledge that you are filling, and also it will allow you to freshen your SOC, which leads to 4, secure the SOC. For our friends in the back, a SOC is a significant original contribution to knowledge. A SOC is the defining characteristic of a PhD, and without a SOC, it's not a PhD. The issue, though, is the longer that your thesis progresses, particularly if you don't work on it for extended periods, means that your research that you're doing could very easily be replicated somewhere else in the world. You see, there have never been more PhD students than exist right now. There's never been more researchers and academics than there are right now. And plenty of us, people like me, hashtag no pressure, people like me read every day, people like me write every day and publish a lot. So the longer you wait, the greater the chance that someone will gazump you, will publish on your SOC. So as you reconnect and reorganize your life to complete the thesis, really early on, straight after you've updated the literature review, I need you to secure the SOC. Write it down, put it in the abstract, put it in the intro, put it in the conclusion. Secure the SOC. 5, touch the thesis every single day. This is the way you get home. Touch the thesis every day. If you want to finish this PhD, you have to go into that file every single day and do something. And doing something might be changing a margin. It might be altering a title. It may be checking a reference. But the moment you start to ignore your thesis, it's not there really. If I put a bag over my head, my thesis will go away. The moment you ignore it or you try and avoid it, then excuses fill up your time, and a day becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes a year. So stop it. Stop the avoidance behavior. Stop it today, team. Stop it today. Open the computer, open the thesis file and do something. So make engaging with the thesis part of your daily routine. Now, we talked a little bit about the importance of this for someone walking with and through grief. Incredibly important. But actually, this strategy works for everyone. It creates accountability and a routine of research in your daily life. 6, write 1,000 words a day. Now, this is for the people who want to finish and want to finish quickly. Can I say when students start, I say write 250 words a day, right? But at this point, team, the clock's stopped. You're out. The only way you're going to get back into the game is write 1,000 words a day. And this is one strategy that works, will get you home, because it's moving you from time orientation to task orientation. Now, time orientation, obviously, is the orientation of your day via time. So I work 5 hours a day on the thesis. No. What we're now moving to finish is task orientation. So you are writing 1,000 words for me every single day. One task, 1,000 words, that's what you're doing. And it can be low-hanging fruit. So don't judge those 1,000 words, right? It can be anywhere. Start with the easiest 1,000 words in the thesis and keep doing, oh, well, I can write 1,000 words on that. Keep filling in those gaps. Do the low-hanging fruit, do the cliche, do the low-hanging fruit first. No judgment. So you're not drafting, you're not editing, no judgment. Write 1,000 words a day. Cool. 7, recognize that intermissions don't solve your problems. Now, sadly, students take a break. Students take an intermission. And the intermission is always a proxy that the student is not going to finish. So the more intermissions a student takes, the more likely they are to not finish. Now, if you don't address what's causing the problems, then they're going to continue. This is always my critique of intermission, right? So I'm not saying don't take an intermission, but you know what? I probably am. Because if you have a problem in a candidature or in the rest of your life, then solve that problem. Solve the problem. Going on intermission mostly won't solve that problem. And also don't think that an intermission will help this situation, because it certainly won't fix the thesis. And in fact, when you return to the thesis, you're going to return to some problems that you didn't have before you went on intermission. As we've talked about, your literature review is going to date and your SOC may be filled, right? So actually your intermission is creating new problems for the thesis. So go into it with your eyes wide open. 8, tell your friends, tell your family that you're going to finish this damn thing in 6 months or perhaps in 3. You've often heard me say it takes a village to complete a PhD. And it is important to remember that your family, your friends have parked their needs, their happiness, things they'd like to do so that you can get this thesis finished. They have parked their hopes and dreams so you finish. And you haven't finished. So it's time for some group accountability. It's time that your friends and your family know that they've supported you and you respect their time and you respect their support. So give yourself a deadline, tell the people around you that this is your deadline and ensure that they hold you to it. Commit to the ending, have accountability and finish. 9, write the full draft now. Don't worry about the details. Hammer to the first draft. Right, for you right now, for you right now, you have a singular goal. You got one job. Complete the entire first draft. Don't fluff about worrying about chapter 5. Don't fluff about going, I don't like the word I've used in chapter 2. No. I need you to go full throttle and get to that full first draft. Now, once you've got a full draft, everything changes. And good supervisors can get you from a first draft to completion in 8 weeks. Remember my 10 drafts to completion? Once you've got your first full draft, 10 drafts, thanks, you're done. But I need you to give the process everything for me. 1,000 words a day, every day, until you get to that first full draft. No editing, no prettying, no. Hammer to the first draft. And then, of course, we end up with, hi Super Sam, we end up with 10. Make a decision. Stay in the program, leave the program, but don't suffer. Okay, now I've given you 9 suggestions in order that will work and will get you completed. But if you can't enact those 9 processes, if you're not motivated to finish, then you have some decisions to make, and let's make them. Remember, at the end of a long candidature, your supervisors may have retired, they may have been restructured out of the organisation, they may have resigned, they may have died. They also, and this is very common, they also may have heard every one of your excuses and they've given up on you, okay? Know that whenever a student is enrolled for a long time, in all probability at the end, you're going to have to supervise yourself. Your supervisors can't really look after themselves at the moment. Great mate of mine is a casual staff member and she supervises research masters, and you need to hang on to yourself. She supervises masters. And the university pays her 3 hours for an entire semester to supervise a master's student. She's a casual staff member and she gets 3 hours a semester to supervise you. And remember, adjunct, emeritus staff are not paid at all to supervise you. Every minute, every hour they give you is a minute, is an hour away from their family, their friends, and their research. So look in the mirror. Can you do this? Yes? No? Look in the mirror. Are you prepared to write 1,000 words a day? Yes or no? Look in the mirror. Are you prepared to hurtle yourself to your first full draft? Yes? No? Are you prepared to take sole responsibility for the completion of this thesis? Yes? No? Now, if the answer to any of those questions is a no, I'm really proud of you, because that is an honest no. Really powerful. And of course, you now know that it's the time to leave your higher degree program. The stress on you, the stress on your family, the stress on your friends, the stress on your supervisor, when you're not prepared to do the work, will end really badly. So please, make a decision to get on with the rest of your life. Now, I hope you will continue and finish, and that's why I've given you the 9 stages to be able to do that. But please, make a decision today. Don't drift. Just start the next chapter of your life and be cool with it. So Super Sam, let's get this finished for you, okay? Touch the thesis every day. 1,000 words a day, hurtle to the first draft. That's how we get you finished. You are brilliant, and yep, we got this and we got you. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.